Okay, you ready, honey?
As ready as I'll ever be. This is your life.
That's right. This is your life.
This is your life.
Okay, we are Sam and Vicki Ingrassia, and we're in Wiley, Texas, and it's January 16th, 2025. Imagine that. I remember when they were thinking that the year 2000 would be like the end of the world. Now we're in 2025 and we're still here. Well, we primarily want to talk today really about Vicki's story. So, as I hope you know, I've been shooting some legacy videos this past year. Our nephew TJ Ingrassia is here. He's the one shooting his video. And last August, I shot a series of videos. I hope you've begun to see them or will see them. They're on a YouTube channel. I provided that information. And then through this last year, I also wrote this Life Stories book, which overlap with the videos some, but I just took an opportunity to write about the journey of our lives and some lessons and things that I in particular wanted to pass on to you guys. So we're primarily trying to talk to Lila, Brody, and Cedar, our three grandkids, who live all near us here in Bozeman Farm in Wiley, which has been one of the greatest blessings of our lives, live near these kids as they're growing up. But we also wanted to have this opportunity to kind of reach out and touch the future a little bit. And so we could be recording today and speaking into the lives of our great-grandchildren, which would be Lila, Brody, and Cedar's kids, if God sends them children. And we wanted to be able to say something to our great-grandchildren, whether or not we actually met them in life. So the other videos in the book have a lot of great stuff in it, and I hope you'll find your way in that material. But today we wanted to take an opportunity, because TJ was in Dallas, to just shoot some video and let Vicki tell her story. Because I've been doing all the talking, and we wanted to get her voice and her story. So we're just going to interact with you a little bit and have some fun. So there you have it.
All right, you have it.
Okay, this woman's been the greatest blessing that ever came into my life. So, and her life touching your lives, certainly through the grandchildren, but then through legacy, we trust. All right.
Well, this is our 50th wedding anniversary this year in May, end of May. Been married 50 years, but we've known each other a lot longer than that. Sam came into my life when I was in high school, and it was very providential, I believe, that God put us in the English class together, and we started to know each other and date our senior year in high school. I was born on March 22nd, 1953, so I'll be 72 this year, which is kind of unbelievable. One of the greatest blessings in my life when I was little too was I lived very close to my grandmother. I could actually walk to her house. It took me about an hour, but those were the days where you could do that. So that was a great blessing. She not necessarily spoken to my life in any spiritual way, but a physical and emotional way by being close. My other grandparents lived in southern Illinois, and we would visit them once a summer. And as a child growing up, it was a very good experience with my grandparents. So I'm blessed to be able to carry that on to my children also, to just be there for them and what they need. When I visited my grandmother in southern Illinois, they were church-going people, and in fact, they had started a church. They were church planters in southern Illinois. I didn't know that till I got older. But I remember going to that church, and I remember when I was about 8 years old, I was walking down the street near my grandmother's house. I was very spiritually aware my whole life, basically. I had a lot of questions from my mom, which she didn't give me a lot of answers, but I asked the questions anyway. Walking down that street that day, I just happened to glance on a building. It was Christian Science reading room. It was about the size of this living room, I think. I didn't go inside. But I remember stopping and looking at that building and wondering, maybe there's some answers to my questions about God in that building. And that is really the first time I heard the Lord speak in my heart, not a voice, but very strongly in my heart. He said, "That's not for you. That's not for you." And I kind of stopped and I was, well, okay, that's not for me. And I walked on my way. But that was my first encounter with hearing God talk to me where I was. Since my dad was raised in Southern Illinois, basically, he met my mom, I'm not sure where, somewhere in St. Louis. I'm not sure. I think at some type of a event, family event. My grandparents didn't necessarily like my dad at all, and that's a very light statement. They really did not like my father at all. My mom went on to have 5 kids after she married him. I was the second of 5 children. And my sister is older, a year, 13 months older than I am. And then my 3 brothers, it was just bing, bing, bing.
What were all their names?
Well, Trudy was the oldest, and then Richard, Randy, and Rob followed closely. Back then, people had their children close, and it wasn't unusual to have a large family like that, 5. However, when I turned 11, or I think it was 12, my mother had to go to work because my dad got really sick and had to quit his job. And so he was an invalid basically for the last 12 years of his life. So he wasn't real active in our lives at all. He couldn't be. But the burden of raising the children basically financially was on my mom. And that was very stressful. At age 12, I was very aware of all the stress that she was under. And because my grandmother didn't really like my dad at all, there was no help there. There was no encouragement from her mom, our dad. And they had money. They could have provided for us. So we lived paycheck to paycheck. Basically, when I turned 16, I got a job so I could financially give that to my mom to help put food on the table. However, I say I kind of lost my childhood at age 11 or 12 because my mother was the breadwinner and I took care of the family basically at home. And that was a lot of stress on me. However, I did it because I knew it was needed, and I never got any words of appreciation from my mom, but I know she told other people she really appreciated what I did. So that's kind of my childhood in a nutshell, other than being in school and working on the weekends and being in school. That was kind of my life. However, very early in my life, not only did I hear the voice of God at that time by my grandmothers, I also knew for a fact that I wanted to be a nurse. That was very strong in my heart. I feel like that was from the Lord, basically. but I wanted to be a nurse. However, I knew there was no opportunity financially from my family to do that. So I worked very hard in school and was able to get a full scholarship, go to nursing school, St. Luke's Nursing School in St. Louis. And there is where my last year in nursing school, I had a friend who invited me to a Bible study, and that's where I became very much aware of the reality of what Jesus did for me. In that verse, John 14:6, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And I realized it wasn't a religion, it wasn't something I could do, that it was what Jesus did. And I learned that through a Bible study. But I also, very young, I was very much aware of the dysfunction in my family. And I would always ask my mom. I was raised in a Lutheran church, but in the summertime I would go to a Baptist vacation Bible school with a friend of mine up the street, just basically to get out of the house. And that's where I heard some truth, but I was very confused because I wasn't learning that at my church. But I always, as I said, asked my mom questions about God and religion and what's the right way. So when I heard that verse in John 14:6 where Jesus says, "I am the way," that God was answering that question of mine. Besides being a nurse, I also was very aware of many things around me that were negative, and my family wasn't real encouraging with any of us. We were on survivor mode, and I realized when I got older it was just survival. It was survival for my mom, survival for me. My siblings weren't much help doing things around the house, but we were on survival mode, and so that's why my mom had a hard time really expressing any emotion, any encouragement. She did in her own way, but I didn't really feel that towards me. So when I met Sam in high school, the first thing that drew me to him really was one weekend, I think it was, you had visited your grandparents for the weekend, and you were telling somebody in school how much fun you were having with your grandparents, and he had a garden in the backyard, and you were just having a lot of fun with the family. And that intrigued me, and that drew me to him, more or less, because I needed that and I wanted that, and I didn't have that. And I never knew what that was like, to have a really close family, to have fun in your family. So that's the reason why we were drawn together. I was drawn to you. And at the time, we were not believers, but later on, he and I became believers as time went on. So I also knew very early in my life, and it's very strange because I didn't even know what that meant, but I had a desire to be a missionary. That's very weird because I didn't even know what that word meant. And I was exposed to missionaries, but I didn't know what they did. So it's kind of interesting. So my encouragement to anyone who's listening to this, watching this, is God gives us crumbs along the way in our life. And if we follow those crumbs, and sometimes the crumbs are 10 years apart, 5 years apart, but if we connect the dots, we can really have an exciting life and a very vibrant, real life with the Lord and with each other. One of the times that were kind of very hard for me in my life after we got married, we moved to New Jersey. It was New Year's Eve. It was dead in the winter. It's cold up there in the winter. I don't know if there's any snow or ice on the ground. But we were moving from Florida to New Jersey. And I was kind of ripped out of all my support system. Back then we didn't have cell phones, so you had to pay for your phone calls, each one. And I was kind of ripped out of my security, my support system in Florida, because I did have friends, because we're in Bible college and I have friends and support. So I felt very lonely and I felt very isolated. I had 3 small children, Stephanie, Tina, Nicole. Tina was 4.5, Nicole was 2.5, and Stephanie was just a brand new baby. She was 6 months, 3 months, October, November, December, January, 3 months old. So I felt very lonely, very isolated, and very much pressure there, not to be a pastor's wife. I told them very early when they were interviewing us, I don't do Sunday school and I don't play the piano, so what good am I as a pastor's wife? And they were like, that's okay, we don't care, we want Sam. You just come along for the ride, I guess. So, as I said very early, I felt isolated. So we went, I guess it was in January, or no, the next year, February the next year, Sam and I went to a pastor's conference in Florida. My mom came up to watch the kiddos. And I was very much in need to hear something from the Lord. I didn't know that I was that hungry until we were at that conference and something profound happened, and that was the man who was speaking up front. We were sitting in the church, in the conference. We were sitting far apart from each other. And he was talking to us and he said, okay, I want you to do something. I want you to be real quiet. Don't talk to anybody around you. I'm going to stop talking, which is unusual for a pastor to stop talking. But anyway, he said, I'm not going to say anything. But what I want you to do is ask God to really speak to you, to tell you something for you, not to give to somebody else, but to speak to you. And last year, I think it was, or 2 years ago, Sam had my son-in-law, who's an artist. He made this picture for me, which expresses exactly what God said to me that day. And he said, Vicki, you're like a rose. I mean, that wasn't in my conscious thinking at all. So I knew, because I had asked the Lord to say something to me. He said, Vicki, you're like a rose, and each petals tells what he said. He said, you are expensive, you are special, and you're unique. Those are the 3 things he said to me. You're expensive, you're special, and unique. And I just kind of sat there saying to myself, This is coming from me. I mean, in my most creative way. I couldn't have thought of that. So I was very encouraged. I was, I guess, filled up with a sense of God's presence and God's word to me. And I don't remember anything else about that conference, actually. It was just those words that he spoke to me. And sometimes I know life gets so busy and we're so always on the treadmill of life, doing. But to sit silent and to really ask God to speak to us or give us purpose or direction, it's a very profound thing that the God of the universe would speak to us, to me, and be very, say those pointed things to me. So I went home a changed person. I went home not without problems, not without issues, but with like an anchor to my soul that would always be there all through the rest of my life. That was when I was about 31 years old. So you're talking about 50 years ago, almost. 40 years ago? Math, 30, 40, yes. 40, sorry, I'm bad at math.
You're not 81.
Challenge with math. So that was a very deep, profound thing for me, I would say. So I really want to encourage you, whoever you are out there, to sometimes just sit quiet and the noise of the world, put it aside. It doesn't have to be for a long time, just for 5 minutes or whatever. But I heard a long time ago taking a class by Henry Blackaby, who recently has passed. He had a class I took several times and actually led it, Experiencing God. And he says in there, God is always talking. Are we listening? He's always talking through nature, to our souls, talking through other people. He's always talking, and we need to listen to him. Fast forward many years of New Jersey, then we moved to Texas. And really, there's a bumper sticker that says, I was not born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I could. That's how I kind of feel about Texas. And New Jersey was a maturing time for me. I had to grow up because I didn't have my support system. I had to grow up. I had to develop a closer relationship with God, not just words here and there. And actually, the first house we moved in New Jersey, it was green. It had ugly green siding. And I remember standing in the yard in New Jersey and just hearing that still small voice. You're going to grow up. It was a green house. And I thought, oh great, the fun begins. So New Jersey really was a growing time for me with my children, my husband. And I was a pastor's wife, but I really wasn't engaged a lot in the church. I mean, I went to church, but I didn't have any position. We moved to Texas, of course, to follow the Lord's leading to be missionaries. And I knew that I was going to be alongside Sam going different places. We've been all over. We've been all over the country, but my heart settled in Romania and Colombia. So I was able to express my own gifts there, lead prayer teams, and really share my story door to door with people, salvation story. When Sam and I did that, it was very, very much for us as much as for other people. We got a lot out of it. And unfortunately, I don't travel anymore because of physical ailments, but for many years, I was able to go with him, and the girls would stay with people, or they got to be teenagers and blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to when they all graduated out of college, which we're thankful that they graduated and got jobs. There's another time God just really intersected with me, and that was, we found out Stephanie's pregnant, and we found out on the phone. Tina called us, our oldest, called us to tell us that she was on the way to the hospital with the father of the unborn child because they thought she was having a miscarriage. And Sam kind of put the phone down and he told me, and honestly, I was afraid to say, do anything, because I knew God was working somehow in Stephanie's life. So I told Sam, I'm going in the back room and I got to hear from God. I can't speak. I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. So I went in the back room, shut the door, and just started reading. And I started reading the book of Ecclesiastes, which I don't read the book of Ecclesiastes, but there's a verse that's just jumped out of the page, and it was 11:5. You do not know the path of the wind, or what the body, I have my glasses, or how the body is formed in a mother's womb. You cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening don't let your hands be idle. For you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will be equally well. So when that reference was in a mother's womb, you don't know how God forms a baby in the womb. I know what God was telling me to do. Just pray and wait and trust, as he always says. And my part was to be that support. So I came out of that room, I bolted out of the room, and I basically said to Sam, I'm in. I am in. And he was like, what happened? I said, let me show you the verse. I'm in. Whatever happens, I'm in. If this baby's born and they have difficulties, neither one at the time had jobs. And I'm thinking, are they going to end up living with us and blah, 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 blah. But neither one at the time had a job.
Brian and Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was doing a little bit of artwork. She was doing a little bit of babysitting. I mean, they didn't have any sustainable income. So as time went on, she didn't lose the baby. The baby was born, and that baby was Lila. And I'll have to say, my grandchildren are the greatest blessing that we've ever had, and it's probably because they live down the street and we can be very much involved, but Little did I know I would be involved very heavily. My nose is runny for some reason. I would be very involved with their life because they needed a babysitter full time, basically. I didn't live with them, they didn't live with us, but we were there a lot and they were here a lot.
Well, Brian got on the track of becoming a fireman.
Yeah.
Steffi got on the track of becoming a Southwest flight attendant. So it was kind of dream jobs for both of them. But the training time that was involved for both, and then the early job where, Lila was living with us almost as much as them.
Yeah, she lived with us because it was 6 weeks training. And she lived with us because the training for Southwest Airline is right here in Texas, right by the airport, Dallas airport. And she basically had to stay there. And Brian was doing his training for his job. She was doing her training. So Lila was kind of in the middle. And I knew this first, and I said to the Lord, I'm in, whatever that means. Little did I know. But by the end of 6 weeks, I have a really good picture, and I have it with me. Stephanie was graduating from training, flight attendant training. And I didn't want to go to the graduation. I was exhausted watching a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, 2-year-old. She could walk around 2 years old. And I remember Brian was picking her up to go to the graduation. And I had her all dressed. I had her sitting by the door, not outside, inside the door. She was sitting on the suitcase, waiting. Because she was as tired of me as I was as tired of her after 6 weeks. And we never had any, conflict, but she needed to go be with her parents. There was no doubt about it. Stephanie would visit now and then and call her and stuff, but she didn't stay with them because Steph was there full time. So that was the beginning. Little did I know that their schedule, very demanding. And Sam and I basically raised those kids up until about, Lila's going to be 12 in February. And we were there. They were here, we were there. Early mornings, Steph would have 4 a.m. flight. Brian left at 5 o'clock every morning when he worked. She would be gone for 3 days. He would be gone for 24 hours. We're very much involved raising them. But I never had a resentment. I never took it out on those kids. Lila, Brody, and Cedar are very special to my heart. And I remember one day, it was very interesting. Lila was able to walk. She's kind of dancing around in the living room. We have music on. Sam liked to dance with her and twirl her and all this stuff. I remember one day just contemplating the fact and looking at her. And I said in my heart, do you love me as much as I love her? Do you love me as much as I love her? And I try to connect the emotions to what I knew in my head. But here it was being demonstrated up close and personal to me. The emotion of having love. Real profound love. And that's how I feel with these grandchildren. I always have. Never resented it. I've never all the times showing up there early in the morning, and there not being a lot of food in the fridge, and me have to take the kids, put them in the car, go to the grocery store. But we always had a great time. I liked to take Lila. She loved to go to the pet store. She liked to look at all of the snakes and all of this. And one day when she was even, I don't know when it was, 8 years old, 9 years old, there's like a petting zoo ranch not too far from here that they keep the kids for a week, and they go and have a good time. Well, I have a picture of her with one of these huge pythons. I'm telling you, things bigger than her, around her neck. We got a picture of it. She's very proud to carry this snake around. But that's kind of fun I have with her and them, which I didn't have as a child, and I really didn't have with my own children, because I was growing up as they were growing up in so many ways. So I have apologized to them because I didn't feel like we had much fun. But Sam always brought fun into the family. I'd be trying to have this serious conversation at the dinner table, you know, and he's making fun of something or something. But it was always fun. Sam was I was calling him, what did we call you? He was a good cop, I was a bad cop. That's how we raised the kids. He was a good cop, I was a bad cop. So you know, sometimes there was some conflict with what to do with these kids. But he brought a lot of fun. He played outside. The whole neighborhood would wait for Sam to come home from work because they know they were going to play baseball outside. And we lived on a cul-de-sac, and we had the type of house and yard, much to my chagrin, ruined all the flowers and all the plants in the front yard because they were playing base with the ball, you know, of course. I was the bad cop. He was a good cop. And I'm thankful for that. I don't think he was a good cop and I was the bad raising the grandchildren. I think we both enjoyed it. It was fun. We still enjoy them. Brody and Lila both are treasures. They are, and Cedar, sorry, I'm looking at their picture, that's why I said that. They're treasures to us. You always hear, I always said to Stephanie in her growing up years, I'm not going to end up in jail because of you. Meaning, I'm not going to throw you out the window or do anything bad, because I'd be so frustrated. I'd say, Stephanie, I'm not going to jail because of you. Someday. So I know this is the fruit of my labor, is being able to watch these grandkids. I know that it is. And I can't really thank the Lord enough for the grandchildren. Not to dismiss the fun I have with my kids, but I really feel like they're a gift. They are a total gift. So it took a long time to really understand that. But I'm thankful that I finally did realize how precious they are to me and to this family. Have a lot of fun, do a lot of crazy stuff. And even last night I was with Brody, and he'll say to me, let's do God's prayer. He calls the Father, the Father's Jesus prayer, disciples prayer. He calls it God's prayer. So he knows most of it. We've recited most of it. But Brody's very much in tune with spiritual things. And he's the one that brings them up. It's not me. One day he came over, he said, "Why do you have so much Jesus decor in your house?" Why do you have so much Jesus decor in your house? This is like he's 7 years old or something. His dad's an artist, of course. He says decor. But he always asks spiritual. And he reminds me a lot of me at that age. So I always am very careful to stop and answer his question if I can. Sometimes it's so out of the box, I have no idea the answer to the question. But I do believe he's going to be something, I'm not going to say in ministry, but he's very God conscious. He's always asking questions. So I'm thankful that I'm in his life, we're in his life. So he goes, I know he can't go to Columbia yet, but I could think of him going someday. And maybe Lila too in that way.
So let's just bring up to speed here a little bit, contemporary life. So what have you been going through the last couple of years with your health? Because
Well,
the kids have been, the whole family's been experiencing a decline with your health. Why don't you just tell a little bit about what's going on?
well, I tell everybody who asks, why don't you go out of the country anymore, travel? I said, because I'm grounded. I've been grounded for about 3 years,
You've been grounded longer than that.
4 years, 5 years. I don't remember. How long?
Well, you haven't been internationally since Lila was born. Actually, that was by
when
your
I
choice.
started watching
But
her,
what I'm
yeah.
saying is in terms of your health
illness.
limitations, that's the last,
Well, I was
years.
diagnosed 3 years ago.
We had the TIA and stroke in April 2021, and here right now in February is the 3rd anniversary of the myelofibrosis diagnosis.
So that is basically cancer of the blood. So every 2 weeks I have to have my blood drawn and look up my numbers, specifically white cells, red cells, and my platelets, which I have bruises, but less bruises than I used to. So I love my doctors. I never thought I'd ever say that, but I do. I love my doctors. And very, very attentive. They're conservative in my treatment. But I do have some residual effect from, he says it's TIA, but I know that was a stroke, but it just didn't manifest totally. I'm thankful that I can still walk and talk, as you can see, and I can be involved, but to a lesser degree. Sam picks up a lot of it with the kids. He watches them more than I do. Gets them to school.
So what's the symptom? Why is that? What's your main symptoms or troubles?
What's that?
What are your main symptoms or troubles with this disease?
Well, weakness, sometimes inability to find words and I think that's medication induced, really. It is. Weakness, pain in my right arm, right here, which I've been to almost 20 doctors in Dallas, all specialists. We've taken so many x-rays, so many MRIs, so many tests, and everyone says, well, we don't know. I've had therapy, I have medication, blah, blah, blah. So I just live with it. I just accept it as part of getting old, and I accept it as just slowing me down. I have no resentment or anger toward God with it. Why not me is my thought. Why not me? There's a lot of people who have worse things, and I'm thankful that I could still function and do things around the house. Not much, but enjoy outside and blah, blah, blah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, how do you feel about being this sick or this debilitated? You can't do what you used to do, watch the kids as much,
Well,
you're not
I've
as
had
mobile.
I really, at the beginning, had to grieve the loss of that and accept where I am. I had to come to that understanding very quickly because I knew I could go down a path of depression and anger, which would get me nowhere. So I did have to grieve more than anything. I had to grieve not being able to travel. And not, I don't mean to all these places people go to. I'm talking about ministry. And I did have to grieve that and stay in the present. Sam has really helped me with staying in the present, not looking in the past, and not dreading the future. And that's a biblical principle. It says don't look at the things in the past, don't look at the things in the future. Tomorrow night might not ever come for anybody. So I try to stay in the present. Not that I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I mean, Lila's 12th birthday's in a couple weeks. I think about those kinds of things, but I'm talking about dread. I tell Sam all the time, I know I'm going down the hall of death. I know the door that I'm going to go through. Jesus said he's the door. I know I'm going to walk through that door someday. It's the hallway that I don't know what's going to happen in the hallway. You know, there's other doors there that might open, and I have this and I have that, and I had my gallbladder removed. I had what did I have? I can't remember. Kidney stone.
Blood clots.
You know, blood clots. It's like, but being a nurse is really helpful because I can diagnose. It's positive and negative. And been in the ambulance a few times. They show up at the door and I tell them what's wrong and I tell them what to do. And I'm having a blood clot. This is what you need to do. Blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and I just guide them. It's helpful. It's very helpful. But it's also negative in that I self-diagnose and sometimes wait too long, and that is an understatement of waiting too long to attend to it. So, any other questions?
I don't know. Maybe that's good. Anything else you want to say? That's your great grandkids over there. Your great grandkids in that camera.
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried to explain to them and to Brody without being too scary. And, you know, death is scary for a kid. I one time had a conversation with Brody, you know, and said, you know, someday we're all going to die, Brody. We're all going to die. He goes, not today, not today. And I said, no, not today. And he said, will you be waiting for me? He said, will you be waiting for me? I said, Brody, I'll be waiting for you. So he understands, I think, there's a transition. Might not be here, but I'll be waiting for him. And that was very dear. That was the most profound thing he could have said to me. Will you be waiting for me? And then he said, not today, not today. So I said, no, Brody, not today. I don't think, not today. So they're up to speed with my weakness. It's a progressive thing. They have a 2-story house. I can't go up those steps. They know that. I used to tuck them in, say prayers, go upstairs. I can't do that anymore, which I wish I could, but I just can't chance it. I could pull myself up there, but getting down might be hard.
Yeah. Well, Vicki, you've been a treasure in all our lives, and of course, especially in mine. We met, like you said, in high school, so we've been together since we're 17 years old. Now we're 71 years old, so that's a long time. But you've been the greatest treasure. You've always been by my side. You've been the core in the family. A lot of gifts, a lot of energy, a lot of hospitality, literally hundreds of parties and hostings. And so you can say a lot about on this testimony about who you've been and what you've done. You've been to Romania about as many times as I have. You helped bring an orphan kid over here for surgery and did all this stuff in the embassy. You've been to Moldova. You led prayer teams. You've done scores of ministry in the United States since we've been in Dallas and even back to New Jersey. And then the mission stuff, prayer teams, intercessory teams. You mobilized Kay and Jim Johns originally. They became a core of E3. You brought them originally. You've done so much in all of your daughters' lives. They all respect you. They rise up and call you blessed. I think they all think you're a great woman of God. You've been an intercessor. You've known for the leading prayer teams, all these mission trips. So you've given a lot and done a lot and used your gifts, hospitality. And so what's happened since we moved in this house, it all just kind of slowed down. And we've been here 5.5, screeching halt here. So it's like life closes in on us, right? No matter who we are. But it's closed in on you. So even your walking around is not that stable, from time to time. You have to have mobility check. And so you're in a chronic progressive blood disorder. We all know that. But I just want to say you've done it really well, graciously. Your attitude's been great. Your emotion and spiritual stability been good, better than mine. And it's been hard for the family to see you decline because you've been such a centerpiece of energy. So it's very different for you to be in this place, but everybody loves you and understands. So.
Well, I could give glory to the grace of God. He gives you the grace you need in the moment. That's why you got to stay in the moment. He doesn't give you the grace for tomorrow. He gives you the grace for today. And I've heard somebody say, don't borrow tomorrow's troubles. Don't borrow them. And if I go there, I'll go down really quick. I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to leave you. But I know where I'm going, and it gives me great peace. And I think my family life, even though my family of origin is extremely dysfunctional, whose isn't, mostly, it gave me the foundation to be a survivor, to just keep going, not look back. I never looked back at my family and said, why couldn't I have their family? Why couldn't I be in their family? Because I never knew what their family was. My friend said, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. So you don't know what's going on.
Well, there was a lot of stuff tracking in your family that you turned around. I mean, it ended with you. So when we came to the Lord around the same time in spring of 1973, I'd always said that, when you came to Jesus, you seriously did, and you gave your life to Him, whole life to Him very quickly with your Bible, and you were a little
very
bit
self-righteous,
legalistics, all that stuff, the phases we go through. But you put your hand to the plow and never look back. I mean, you drew a line in the sand with me. If I wasn't going to follow the Lord, we weren't going to be able to continue. It just wouldn't have worked out. So God used your life to hook me, and but I couldn't have had a better wife and better partner. You've been side by my side in just every step. We don't have any major regrets. I mean, we've had a lot of difficulties, and you wish you didn't have some of those, right? But that's all just part of it and the journey. But it's like we never felt like we missed some major fork in the road or something. So when we left our careers to go to Bible college, we put them aside as an engineer and a nurse. We from Bible college, we felt called to ministry full time. You were down for that. And then I was teaching in the Bible school, and you were there just raising the early kids in Florida. They were all born in Florida. Then we went to New Jersey, as you said, and you're a pastor's wife, so we were there. It was challenging years. But that was a great seedbed for launching us into missions to Texas. Got here as quick as you could. And then I don't think we would have imagined when we came how much you were going to get involved in the mission work. You really did co-own it and took up your own fingerprints and flavor on it all in terms of primarily prayer ministry and mobilizing prayer teams and just intercession, and then just your own fingerprints on people's lives, and especially in Romania, right? Slobozia especially, and all those people down there, and just on and on and on. So you really co-owned all of that mission work. Like I said, until Lila was born, and then your mission shifted to the family. So you were all about those kids, pouring your life into the family and the kids, and that was kind of the end of the international mission. The family became your mission. And then, like I said, once we moved over here, it's just become more difficult. So you've just done it all really well, Vicki. You've had a great life, and I hope you have a lot of years to go, but I want you to have healthy time too. So I love you.
I love you.
More than my own life, and you've been a great partner, a great wife, a great mom, a great
fun
grandma.
Ride, it's for sure.
So
Never could have imagined
yeah.
any of it.
So anyway, thank you, TJ. I'm glad we were able to get your voice. I told Vicki a few weeks ago, we don't have your voice, Vicki. We don't have your image. There's scattered pictures, but you don't speak much publicly or anything. So you can find me if you Google me. I'm all kind of around there, but we wanted to get your voice for the future. And who knows who might listen to this. And like I said, reach out and touch the family in the future some way, just so they could know who you were a little bit and what you stood for in your life. So thanks for doing the interview.
You're welcome.
You have anything else you want to say?
I didn't want to do it.
You didn't resist much. If you really don't want to do something, you don't do it.
No, but
you
traveled and has set up stuff. I mean, how could I say, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Well, you wanted to say something anyway to the legacy. So
well, it's a evidence of God's grace in a person's life if they just follow the crumbs, as I said.
Yeah.
And you don't know the whole picture. You don't know the whole map. You think you do, and in seminary they say, what's your future plans? It's like, are you kidding me? You just kind of take one step at a time. And the Lord has been faithful to provide for us in so many ways. So many ways. So
Yeah, for sure.
He gives us the encouragement to keep going, that it's worth it. It's so worth it. It's worth it here on earth as well as in heaven. It's worth it. Anything He gave up. So.
Let me just say a prayer for you.
Okay, say it.
Okay, Lord, thank you for Vicki's life. Thank you for role in my life and all our family. And we're just going to pray over physical health, emotional, and spiritual health as well in these days. Here we are in 2025. Our lives are in your hands. And I just thank you for this interview and this testimony and for her faith and for her example and model and encouragement and just her love, her words of affirmation to our family, to these, to our daughters and to our grandkids, our sons-in-law, to me, many, many, many people over the years. So you've used her to make a big splash in your kingdom, and I'm thankful I got the privilege to do life with her. So you pray your blessing in Jesus' name, amen.